Hello again, and welcome back to Phillies Extra, the baseball podcast from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm Scott Lauber, and I write about the Phillies and Major League Baseball. And at the risk of irritating the great Larry David, I wish everyone out there within the sound of my voice a happy new year. I hope the first few days of 2026 are treating you well, and I thank you, as always, for taking some time to listen and to watch. We're back from the holiday break, and so too, it seems, are the Phillies. They started the week by announcing a 2-year contract with Don Mattingly to be their bench coach, a hiring that began coming together a while ago, but couldn't be finalized until Mattingly's contract with the Toronto Blue Jays actually expired. I have some thoughts on Mattingly's potential impact on Rob Thompson, the coaching staff, and the players, but I'll save that for a little later in the show. We'll also talk about what comes next in an offseason in which free agency and trade activity across the sport is moving at a pace that only a snail would love. But first, let me tell you about my guest this week. His name is Adam Lind, and if that sounds familiar, well, he had a 12-year Major League career, mostly as a first baseman and designated hitter, mostly for the Blue Jays. He retired in 2017 with exactly 200 career home runs, almost 1,300 hits, and a 112 OPS plus that indicates he was 12% more productive than the league average hitter at that time. His best season came in 2009 when he achieved career highs with 35 homers and 114 RBIs. He played with Roy Halladay and Scott Rowland and peak Jose Bautista. And in his last season in the majors, he was teammates with Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, and Jason Worth in Washington. And now Lind is a hitting coach in the minor leagues for the Phillies. He spent last season with AAA Lehigh Valley, so I thought he was the perfect person to talk about Justin Crawford, who's set to take over as the Phillies' everyday center fielder. We'll also discuss Aiden Miller, Otto Kemp, and some of the other players with whom he worked in 2025. I think you'll enjoy Lind's perspective on a group of hitters who, let's face it, are going to take on increasing importance over these next few years as Harper, Turner, Kyle Schwarber, and others in the core that we've come to know so well begin to get into their mid-30s. Now, Crawford in particular is fascinating to me. He batted .332 between two levels of A-ball in 2023, .313 at high A and double A in 2024, and .334 in triple A last year to win the batting title in the International League. For most of last summer, I got emails and questions on social media from fans who wondered when the Phillies would call him up. What are they waiting for? Haven't they seen enough from Brandon Marsh against lefties and Max Kepler against everyone? But the Phillies kept Crawford in AAA, where he got more opportunity to play every day. And now with Dave Dombrowski signaling that Crawford has the inside track on being the opening day center fielder, I'm hearing from many of those same fans who are nervous about turning over the keys to a 22-year-old rookie. And to those people, I say, if now isn't the time for Crawford, when is it? Look, Crawford isn't the perfect prospect. He hits a lot of balls on the ground, which makes some people nervous, even though he's got terrific speed. His ground ball rate was 59.4% last season. And for context, Christian Yelich had the highest ground ball rate in the majors at 56.7. Only 7 of 145 qualified hitters in the big leagues were even over the 50% mark. Defensively, the opinions of evaluators, even within the Phillies organization, are split over whether Crawford is better suited to play center field or left. So yeah, he's somewhat of a polarizing player, to be sure. But this is the time to finally get answers to those questions. Rob Thompson sounds committed to closing his eyes, as he says, and kind of letting the kid play. The Phillies will bat Crawford ninth and do whatever they can to minimize the pressure on him. Maybe he really is their center fielder of the future. Maybe he's not, but they need to find out, especially because Harrison Bader is a free agent. And I know everyone loved what Bader did for the Phillies after he came over at the trade deadline last year. But those were the best 2 months in the best season of his 9-year Major League career, in which he's been a league average or worse hitter. And his timing couldn't be better, right? He's going to get a multi-year contract at a time when the Phillies are paying 100% tax on the next contract they give out. I think it's time to see how good Crawford really is. And I'm excited to get Adam Lind's insight because he worked more closely with Crawford than anyone last year in Lehigh Valley. After that, I'll open my reporter's notebook and we'll welcome in my Inquirer colleague Lachlan March to discuss some storylines that we're looking forward to covering in 2026. And as always, I'll take a listener question at the end of the show. Let's get right to it then. Here's my sit down with Phillies AAA hitting coach Adam Lind. Adam Lind, welcome to Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
There are so many reasons why I wanted to have you as my guest. Of course, I want to ask you about your work over the last 2 seasons as a hitting coach in the Phillies farm system, and specifically about Justin Crawford and Aiden Miller, both of whom you've gotten to know rather well, and we talk about quite a bit here in Philadelphia, and we're going to be talking about them a lot more, I think, even in 2026. But I'd like to start with your playing career. I mentioned in the intro that you played 12 seasons in the big leagues, mostly with the Blue Jays. And for a lot of that time, most of your peak years, I guess you'd call them, I covered the Red Sox for the Boston Herald. So I got to see plenty of your Toronto teams and those fun lineups with Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion. I wonder what it was like for you to 9 years of Blue Jay to the team that drafted you back in 2004, to watch their run to the World Series this year and to kind of see that city and really the whole country of Canada fall back in love with the Blue Jays again. You were there for a long time. What went through your mind watching all of that?
I wish I could have experienced it as a player. Unfortunately, I didn't get to, but you can see the energy of the city was unbelievable. I think it's going to help them in free agency this year. My family was involved. 2 of my children were born there. My wife's from Toronto. So it was a great experience to watch them do well. I played in the minor leagues with John Schneider, the manager, so it was really exciting to see him have success at the highest level. And overall, it was just a good experience that I got to partake with my family and see them, because my wife has memories of like 92, 93.
Yeah.
And now my children will have memories of 2025.
You were there right on the cusp, right? I mean, you just missed that 15, 16, 17 run with a lot of those guys who were your teammates. Could you sense it then? I mean, could you tell that they were building towards something then? And maybe did you get any of that early excitement that, like, Toronto's a great baseball town, especially when the Jays are really good. And you mentioned the 90s, 92, 93. We saw that then. Did you kind of get a little bit of a feeling of that, or was it not really building just quite yet when you left there?
We were definitely building. When I was there for most of my time there, we were always an extremely competitive team, very good, close to the wild card. My first year, we actually got second in the division, which doesn't sound like much. But at that time, there was only 4 playoff teams. Yep. It was also, in my opinion, the height of the Red Sox and Yankees powers. So we were always right on the cusp. And then back in those days as well, we would have, like, let's call it 12 of our last 24 games would be against the Yankees and Red Sox.
Yeah.
And then we would flounder and we'd win 86, 87 games. So we were always an extremely competitive and very well-run team. But then we would have 19 games against Yankees and Red Sox, and it's hard to make the playoffs when those are your rivals. We always had, out of our division and in interleague and against, in the West Coast, we would have a good record. But then here come the Yankees and Red Sox, and it was difficult to stack wins against them.
You're right about that. They were at the height of their superpower days, and it was pre-expanded playoffs, like expanded wild card. You really wonder, I have a feeling that I'd have to go back and look, but I have a feeling that some of those years you guys would have been in the playoffs if they were structured as they are today, just because of the fact that third place in that division was really something, given how much money the Red Sox and the Yankees spent and how competitive they were. Your last season in the big leagues was 2017 with the Nationals, and you were, teammates with a young Bryce Harper and Trey Turner. I wonder, what do you remember about 24-year-old Bryce in particular, 10 years or so younger than you? He was an established star at that point. He'd already won an MVP. What was it like to be around him at that stage of his career?
It was interesting to be around I've never been around, even with Jose Batista and Felix Hernandez, Ryan Braun, like those were superstars, but Bryce takes it to another level. So it was wild to be in his environment. The talent immediately was like, I've never seen a player like that. And then I thought his personality was really interesting. He's actually a very funny character. I enjoyed being around him. It was a good experience, and it was a great year, a great way to end my career, that 2017 summer with the Washington Nationals.
And then 10 years later, you come to the Phillies as a minor league coach. You're in big league camp a little bit in spring training. I'm sure that your paths crossed with Bryce. Mm-hmm. Now he's a father of 4. He's later in his career, but still only in his early to mid 30s. I wonder kind of how he's different and whether getting to reconnect with him even a little bit in spring mm-hmm. training, you see someone who's a little bit different maybe than he was back then.
He definitely has 4. No, I thought he was pretty much the same guy. Yeah. He has 4 children. My son couldn't say a word around him, and my son bat boyed during the games. And Bryce told my son he was the best bat boy he'd ever seen. So my son can barely fit through a door anymore because Bryce Harper complimented my son. So I really appreciate Bryce saying those kind words to my son.
Tell me a little bit about getting into coaching and maybe what led you to the Phillies. You're an Indiana guy. Preston Mattingly is an Indiana guy. I wonder if that was the connection, and also just were there any influences from your playing career that helped shape your philosophy on hitting and the approach that you take into coaching?
Well, getting a job with the Phillies was quite the process. It took me a couple of years to be able to get back in the game. It was actually an enjoyable process because I got to reconnect with some players that are still playing, but ultimately like some coaches or guys that I played with that are now coaching or coaches that I had as a player. So it was good to rekindle those relationships, and it was good to talk about some old times while trying to establish some connections to get back in the game. But as far as my hitting philosophy, there's so much minutia in hitting. It's hard to say do this or do that, but I just tried to learn from everybody, not just my coaches, but also some of the fellow hitters I played with. Remember the down times, how I got out of those times. One thing that's interesting about minor league hitters, especially the lower levels, they think because I played in the big leagues that it was a joyride the whole time. And I'm like, there's some serious dark times, man, in the major leagues when from month to month, or, some players, including myself, even had some down years, and it's tough mentally.
Yeah, I'm sure. And they learn that even through the minor leagues. And one of the people I wanted to ask you about was Aiden Miller, because your first year in the organization, 2024, you were the hitting coach in Jersey Shore. Aiden gets there in June, I think. And, he struggled a little bit at the start, if memory serves. Then he had a really good summer, really good August, especially before he goes up to Reading. And, I think as good as he is and as much success as he's had in the minors, he's experienced some of those ups and downs going to different levels and maybe trying to get his feet on the ground. I wonder what stands out to you about Aiden as a hitter, because like Luke Merton and others I've talked to have told me, about his ability to make real meaningful adjustments, to be very coachable, and you see him kind of get his way out of some of these mm-hmm. struggles that he's had, and he did that with you in Jersey Shore. What did Aiden look like when he got to Jersey Shore, and then what did he look like when he left?
I mean, the first thing I want to compliment Aiden on is his character. Like, it was a tough stretch. We had some deep talks. I learned about him. He learns about me. But the thing is, he worked hard. He gave 110% every single day. And I think more than his hitting or his approach or what I saw, but what I witnessed was the type of kid he is and the character he has. And I think that will benefit him, hopefully, for as many years as he can play. But again, more so than his hitting, his character stands above, like his work ethic. I mean, there's second to none.
And then you were back with him at the end of the season in Lehigh, and maybe he starts the year in Lehigh again this year. Is he just over the course of the last couple of years, being with him and then being away from him and then having him come back and seeing him again, even if it's like when you saw him in spring training and then when you saw him late this season, what do you see just as kind of the biggest growth in terms of his ability as a hitter?
His physicality, like he looks the part, he has the size, he has, as you discussed, he has the tools. But one thing that happened to him was my older players, when they were on deck or when he was hitting or whatever the case might be, they were complimenting him to me. And when you have 29, 31-year-olds like noticing his talent, that means he's got a real future in the game, because a lot of times there's doubt from those types of players. They don't believe it till they see it. I mean, day one, he ignited our team. I know it's AAA, the minor leagues. We had a big series against Scranton, and without him in our lineup that week, we probably wouldn't have won that series. And he was he just ignited our lineup for what we needed at that moment in that part of the season.
Yeah. I think everyone expects Justin Crawford will be a part of the Phillies big league outfield in 2026. Dave Dombrowski has essentially said that. He probably could have helped a lot of major league teams this year, to be honest. And I know here we wondered at various points during the year, like, is this the week that they call up Crawford? Is this the week that it happens? The thing I've always heard about Justin since he was drafted is, he hits the ball on the ground too much. And I've never understood that, because to me, like, Justin's bat to ball skills, his speed, those are his defining characteristics. And if I've got a kid who makes contact and runs like that, I'm not so sure hitting the ball on the ground is a bad thing. He's hit 300 everywhere he's been, at every level. He won a batting title for you this year in AAA. I suspect I know the answer, but I wonder where you kind of come down on the question of, does Justin Crawford hit enough balls in the air to be successful in the big leagues, and does it even really matter?
Hopefully it doesn't matter. Again, I have to give a big shout out to player acquisition and our amateur scouting. Like, between Aiden, between Justin, the type of kids they are, the type of adults they will be, their work ethic, they're second to none. So in terms of how he's going to succeed in the major leagues, you can never forecast the future. But he's got the right mentality. He's got the right work ethic. He's even killed. And as far as hitting too many balls on the ground, it's his approach works right now. He's super fast. His swing works to where he can hit the ball all over the yard. And that, when you're left-handed, it's a big asset to be able to hit the ball on the ground to the left side of the infield. And whenever a defender has to take one step away from first base, that usually means he'll be safe.
You played against his dad. I covered his dad both in Boston and Tampa. Does he remind you of his dad? I mean, I remember when he got drafted, I remember watching him hit, and he kind of has, at that time, I think it's changed over time, but he kind of had that sort of open stance from the left side a little bit. And it reminded me a lot of Carl, but like, I know he's a different player. I know he's his own player, but certainly some of the skills translate, and he's his father's son. Does he remind you at all of Carl, and just having played against Carl as much as you did?
I mean, they're both left-handed. I don't really see a lot of resemblance. Carl is really a physical specimen, strong player, raw talent, where Justin is like smooth. He's tall, he's wiry, he's lanky. That's one thing you might notice this coming spring is how tall he is. I think he's probably like 6'2" or 6'3". He's long, and when he gets that leverage with his arms extended, he's got a lot of pop. And that's one thing about that he'll get better at throughout the course of his career. And I have so many good things to say about these guys. Like, they've had good summers and they're good players, but they're nowhere near their ceiling. Like, these kids are just scratching the surface on how good they're going to be. Sorry, to get back to Justin, he has a lot of raw power. He just has to learn when he starts to learn how to catch the ball more out front, I could see him putting up some better power numbers.
He's a really mature kid too, I think, for his age. And anytime I've talked to him since he got drafted, I had him on this podcast in, I think it was May or maybe early June, and we talked a little bit about like how you stay present and all this talk around you about like, when are they going to call you up? And you probably feel like you're playing well enough to get called up. And I would imagine as the year went on, that only got louder and louder because he was having such a great season. How did you see him handle that, just in terms of like week after week? And is he going to go this week? And he didn't. And it certainly performance-wise, it did not appear to affect him one bit.
Yeah. No, I can't speak for Justin what was running through his head, but as far as the environment in the batting cage, I don't talk about trades. Sorry, Scott, I don't watch the podcast. I don't watch, like, I'm just worried about preparation and what's the task at hand today.
Yeah.
So there was never any what ifs, what could be. It was always, this is what our business is today. Let's throw out Scranton again. This is how they're attacking you. We're talking about approach. He was receptive to that. And no, I never sensed any like anxiety or frustration about him not making it to the major leagues last summer.
Yeah, no, I think that's how it has to be when you play this sport every single day. Gabriel Rincones Jr. is a guy I wanted to ask you about from a distance. Two things that stood out about his season was that he had a much better second half and that he had real extreme splits, left-right. He handled righties really nicely, but struggled against lefties. Where did you leave things with him in terms of like what he needs to do to take that next step? Because now he's on the 40-man roster. He's a phone call away. He might be able to help the big league club in some way sooner than later. I wonder where you left things with him, especially in terms of facing lefties.
Well, I think the first 2 months was good for Gabriel. It forced him to learn about himself and learn about the game. We had discussions about like, hey, what have you learned so far in your career? And there weren't really like great answers yet, but through the struggle, he matured a lot. He learned a lot about his swing. He learned a lot about approach. And I think it was just the level, and I say this a lot, baseball will tell you when you need to make an adjustment. And that was his calling. Like AAA was another level for him. He hadn't played a whole lot, even at AA. So it was a good challenge for him, and he responded well in the second half. As far as left-handed pitching, I tried to give him some tools. We worked a lot with him in HP camp on left-handed pitching. But again, his calling card will be to do well against right-handed pitching. He's immensely talented. In my heart, I think he can hit left-handed pitching, but he just needed some tools and some approach adjustment and just some outside the box thinking on, because I had to try and do it, like how to survive against left-handed pitching.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at Kyle Schwarber, wasn't very good at the beginning of his career. He made adjustments. And it's not usually swing, it's an approach thing. And we're going to hopefully he will improve. The numbers are kind of low against lefties, so it should be easy to make improvements with just simple approach adjustments.
Yeah, I was going to mention Schwarber because like he got non-tendered, right, in part because the Cubs thought he might not be an everyday player because he might not be able to hit lefties, and he hit 23 homers against lefties this year. I know it's an extreme example, but it's probably one as a hitting coach that you can always hold up to a guy and say like, look, it can happen. You can turn it around. And it makes me think a lot about Brandon Marsh. Marsh was a guy too who struggled against lefties. And the question has always been, is he going to hit lefties to play every day? And I wanted to just touch on him for a second with you because he came to you on a rehab assignment at a really interesting point in his year. He didn't have a hit in April. Then he strains the hamstring. And when he went to Lehigh, it certainly seemed like it reset his season. He's talked about that. He talked about being around Garrett Stubbs again for a little over a week and kind of maybe having more fun again for a change. I sort of wondered what you saw from him in terms of like approach and even just state of mind when he got to you. And then when, he went on a road trip with you guys. I think he played a couple of games with you in Rochester before he rejoined the team. What could you sort of sense he was leaving maybe in a different place, frame of mind wise than when he got?
Yeah. Garrett Stubbs is like the golden ticket, man. Like he's a great guy to have in the clubhouse. I enjoyed having him around for the 4 or 5 months he was with us, and he was awesome. But I tell you, when Brandon Marsh was with us, we had some epic wins, and he stayed the whole game. He was just as happy as anybody else on our team, and maybe that's just what it was. I remember going on rehab, going down to high A or double A, and sometimes rehab assignments, it reignites that joy in the game because it is a different environment in the major leagues than it is down in the minor leagues. You can take, step back, take a deep breath. and just get into a different environment for a couple weeks. And then I'm telling you, some of the games we won when Brandon Marsh was there, like a few walk-off homers. We had just called up a kid from Double-A. One actually went in for Marsh in like the 8th inning and ends up hitting a walk-off homer. And I mean, it was just like a great 7-game stretch when Marsh was in town.
Otto Kemp is the last hitter I kind of wanted to go through with you. And, we all know the path, Division II college, undrafted, gets to the big leagues last year and had some really good moments, played through a lot of things too, physically, the knee, the shoulder, but just having been around him, if he gets 400, 500 at-bats in the big leagues, is he a guy who you feel like can be a consistent hitter over that volume at that level? Is that something you think he's capable of doing? And if so, why?
Again, he's another high-character guy. Our amateur scouting, player acquisition did a great job with Otto. High-character guy, high worker. He's a sponge. One thing that's happened in his career was I think he struggled a little bit in low A.
Yeah.
Then did really well. Went to Double-A, struggled, then did really well. Came to Triple-A in 23, struggled. Comes back last year, does really good. To me, that's a sign that he evolves as a hitter. He improves as a hitter. He makes the adjustments. He doesn't just stay the course. Like, he adjusts rather quickly. So hopefully if he gets a lot of at-bats in the major leagues, that same pattern will happen of him becoming better each year, each day. And you see it even in AAA, like he would chase some sliders, but as like April and May went on, he started to chase less sliders. He got better. Like, that's his biggest strength, is the ability to improve and recognize like how pitchers are attacking him.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we'll wrap it up quickly with this. 9 seasons for you with the Blue Jays, 4 or 5 of those as a teammate of Roy Halladay's, who obviously made a huge impression on everyone with the Phillies when he came over in 2010. Do you have a sort of like a go-to Roy Halladay story, a best Roy Halladay story from being around peak Roy Halladay at a time when you mentioned Yankees, Red Sox were superpowers then, and Roy would give those teams fits whenever he faced them. So is there kind of a go-to Roy Halladay story for you?
I'd always ask him when the game was over if he had his scalpel. I'd be like, you have that scalpel out today? But I have another story, and it's kind of hard to believe, but I wasn't even in Major League camp. I had just finished my first full season, and I got called up to a Major League spring training game in Lakeland, and he was pitching. He comes in from the bullpen. I'm just sitting there like fish out of water, and he's sitting right next to me for some reason, and his zipper on his pants was down, and I was like, do I tell this guy? Like, do I tell Roy Halladay that his fly is down? So of course I was like, hey Doc, and he like begrudgingly looked at me like, he's looks past me, and I was like, your fly's down, and he just ignored me. I'm just looking at him out of the corner of his eye, or I'm looking at him out of the corner of my eye, and he doesn't even look at his pants, doesn't even look at him. And then like 10 seconds goes by, and I see him, he looks down, he rolls up his zipper, and I never talked to him for like another 2 years till I got to the big leagues.
Look at that. Well, that's a great story. Saved him from a little embarrassment, I guess, if he had to go back out to the mound with his fly down. But no, I'm so, like, it's funny to hear you say that, because you would always hear the stories like, talk to Roy during the game, he's in his zone and this and that. And even if it's spring training, I can imagine that Roy is a difficult guy to approach. So I give you credit for being a good teammate and telling them heads up. I don't know how many guys would have done that. I would have probably pretended I just didn't see it. So, Adam, look, this was a lot of fun. I've wanted to invite you on for a while, and I know how precious these days are in the off season, because spring training is going to be here before we know it, and we'll be right back in Clearwater on those fields again. So I really appreciate you taking a few minutes and spending some time with us here on Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I will see you in spring training in Clearwater.
I look forward to seeing you and meeting you in person.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. I want to thank Adam Lind again for joining me this week. Time now to open the reporter's notebook, and for that, I want to bring in Lachlan March, my teammate at the Inquirer. Happy New Year, Lachlan. Thanks for doing this.
Happy New Year, and thanks for having me.
So I had to laugh during the holidays, or maybe it was closer to New Year's, I'm not sure, when you posted a picture on social media of yourself on, wait for it, a dog sled. Now, I was in Maine where there was plenty of snow, but no dog sleds, at least not that I could find. So maybe I'll let you tell us how you rang in 2026.
Yeah, I was in Canada, which is where I'm originally from, with my parents and my brother, and we decided one day on New Year's to go, or New Year's Eve, I think, to go dog sledding, and it was awesome. I was on a sled with my brother, and our team of dogs was just amazing. It was a fun experience. I'd done it before when I was little, but now I'm an adult, and I enjoyed it a little bit more.
That's very cool. It makes me wonder what would have happened if, let's say, you're like on the dog sled and the phone buzzes and, the Phillies have signed Kyle Tucker or something insanely crazy like that. Can you just jump off a dog sled?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, our service was really spotty. So when we would drive through the woods, and like my phone would buzz when I got back into a range of service, and I'd be like, oh my God, like what do I do? And I would check, and luckily nothing. But yeah, it was I would get a little jolt of panic a little bit, but thankfully the Phillies let us have a holiday off.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you enjoyed the break, and we're both appreciative of the fact that the Phillies kind of stayed out of the news for a few days so that we could get some time off. But, things are starting to crank back up now. JT Realmuto is still a free agent. So let's start there. Speaking of our phones buzzing, like at the risk of our phones buzzing with any new information before people get a chance to listen to this, I'll just ask this, like, as we sit here today, are you more confident, less confident, or kind of about the same? Do you feel about the same as you did, say, a month ago when we were at the winter meetings, that the Phillies and Realmuto will find a way back to one another here?
Honestly, I do feel about the same. Like, I know people are getting a little bit antsy. I think people are used to maybe basketball free agency, hockey free agency, where everything moves just right away, and they're kind of getting concerned that we're, just a little bit over a month from spring training now. But I mean, if you look at other free agents like Bo Bichette, still, as we're recording this, obviously still unsigned, Kyle Tucker still unsigned. So it's not just JT. I think this is just kind of how the market is right now. And I don't think it's anything to necessarily read into, because we're not, privy to what is going through JT's head, or exactly, like we can't know if there's like a rift there or anything. I think people are just really reading a little bit too much into it. For me, nothing has changed until a new contract has been signed. So I still feel about the same that I did at the winter meetings.
Yeah, I mean, they're not all Aaron Nola, who was a free agent for all of like 14 days before he came back. And if you think back to JT's last free agency, it was, I think, January 25th or 26th before he re-signed with the Phillies. So I don't know if it'll be another 20 days, but I agree. I think that a Realmuto Phillies reunion is still the likeliest outcome here. My sense, and I'm not alone, other reports have suggested similar things, that I think the Phillies and Realmuto just have different valuations right now of him at this stage of his career. He's a remarkably durable but 35-year-old catcher with extreme leadership qualities and game calling ability, but declining offensive skills. And I suspect that there's a 2-year offer on the table at one price point, and maybe a 3-year offer on the table with maybe a slightly lower annual salary. And I doubt JT finds either number to be particularly satisfying right now, based on what he made over the last 5 years. And the market is what it is. And I do understand wanting to sit back and see if he can get anything better from another team. I'm not sure there's a team out there, a contending team at least, that values JT any more than the Phillies do.
Yeah.
And they value him quite a bit.
Yeah. And he's valuable. He knows the pitching staff. Like, I think it makes more sense for him to come back at this point, but we just have to wait and see.
Yeah, we know he wants to win, so I don't think he's looking to go just anywhere. We heard the Red Sox mentioned about a month and a half ago, and I haven't heard as much on them with him. They're trying to re-sign Alex Bregman, so we'll see how it plays out. But again, I think on January 8th, as we sit here, I'm still fairly optimistic that he'll be back with them. Let's move on to the news of the week. The Phillies finally closed the deal on bringing in Don Mattingly as their bench coach. There was some loose ends that had to be tied up with his contract, which had to expire with the Blue Jays before they could make it happen. But It was definitely trending in that direction a month ago. I wonder if you had a takeaway from the call that we had this week with Mattingly and Rob Thompson.
I just thought it was very interesting how like player focused he is. And I understand that that's part of the role as being a bench coach. But what really stood out to me was when he was asked about his working with his son, Preston, and Preston being in the front office and what challenges that might present. And he I think gave a really thoughtful response to that. And he said it was a concern from him from the beginning because he wants to make sure that the players know he's not just going to go running to the front office. Like anything told to him is in confidence, and like he wants them to trust him. And I thought that was really thoughtful. And obviously that comes from, his many years in the game, and he understands like how it goes. So I thought that was interesting, and how he's looking forward to building relationships with the players, even though he knows Jesus Luzardo from the Marlins, but he's not overly familiar on a personal level with many of the other players on the team. So I think that'll be interesting to see those relationships develop.
Yeah, Dave Dombrowski brought that issue up at the winter meetings, if you remember, about the thought that like Mattingly's down there in the clubhouse, and that would there be something that a player might say in the clubhouse, and then he would tell his son about it inadvertently or not, and it would sort of betray the trust that a coach has to have with the players. And I honestly hadn't even thought of that as a potential complication. And it's clear that Don Mattingly is very aware of that and not wanting that to happen. And I think Preston is not going to kind of put his dad in that situation to say, what do you hear about so-and-so, or what is so-and-so like, or this or that. So my biggest takeaway, and I wrote about this for the Inquirer, is that Mattingly, I think could have a real impact on Bryce Harper in particular. Like, it's been a long time since Harper played for someone who had a playing career that even comes close to Mattingly's. I think you have to go back to like at least 2017 in Washington with Dusty Baker, who was a really accomplished player even before he was a probably future Hall of Fame manager. And I'm not sure Harper has ever played for someone who could relate to him as a face of the sport in the way that Mattingly can. Because I was a kid in New Jersey in the 80s, and I can tell you, we all had the Hitman poster, and we all collected his baseball cards. And he was sort of larger than the game at a time when baseball was truly the national pastime. Harper's too young to remember a lot of that, but knowing him, he has a real deep appreciation for baseball history. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but think that, a conversation with Don Mattingly would resonate a little bit differently than it would with even a Kevin Long or a Rob Thompson. So that was kind of one of the things I took from it is, boy, I wonder what that relationship's going to be like. And I can't help thinking it's going to be good for Bryce Harper.
Yeah. And I mean, they both have the first base connection as well. So there's another similarity there. So I'm also looking forward to seeing how that sort of plays out.
All right. Maybe we'll kind of tie it up with this. And I think it's a very general question with a lot of off ramps that we can revisit again and again before we leave for spring training. As we sit here, the dawn of the new year, right? Is there one Phillies storyline, maybe two, that you're looking forward to following in 2026?
I mean, this is almost as broad as the question, but I would say the one thing that I'm most interested in is the rotation. Obviously, the starters have been a strength of the Phillies for the past couple of years, but there's some question marks right now. But then at the same time, Christopher Sanchez is coming off career year, second place in Cy Young. Can he take another step forward in his game? And then, we have Zach Wheeler, who the most recent update we have on him is that he's out to 75 feet. So he is progressing well in his rehab, but there's always question marks on how that's going to go. And he's been obviously the ace of the staff for so many years. So, and we have Ranger, who hasn't signed yet, potentially departing. So I think that just how the rotation is going to look, and I didn't even say Andrew Painter. It's just going to be, I think, just a wealth of stories there on the starters for next year.
Can Jesus Luzardo do it again? He had kind of a breakout year even for him. And I agree with you. And look, the rotation was kind of the strength of the team in 2025. It's if they're going to get to where they want to go, it's going to have to be the strength of the team again, I think, in 26. I was going to hone in specifically on Wheeler because I'm really, I mean, the last time any of us saw him, he was still in the conversation for, is he the best pitcher in baseball, right? On the short list with Paul Skeens and Tarek Skubal and maybe Garrett Crochet. And then boom, he goes down with the blood clot, the thoracic outlet. And that's not a straightforward rehab. There's usually some twists and turns. It's not as common as Tommy John surgery. So when he comes back, is he going to be Zach Wheeler? Is he going to be something less than Zach Wheeler? I mean, we've used the word elite, right, a lot lately in relationship to Bryce Harper. Is he elite, not elite, all of this? Mm-hmm. Is Zach Wheeler going to be elite for reasons that have to do with just coming back from a complicated injury? But since you went rotation, I'm going to go with the idea of kind of a new wave of young players that the Phillies are going to incorporate this year. They've had the fewest major league debuts of any team in the last 3 seasons, which is a function of this veteran roster that's been very much locked in. It's still very much locked in. The core is going to be the core, and they're going to, go as far as they go because of what Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber do. But I think it's essential that Justin Crawford and Andrew Painter and eventually Aiden Miller become a part of this thing, and that they're really good, because that's the way the Phillies are going to sustain this window of contention for a longer period of time. I mean, Justin Crawford's going to get a chance to be, we think, the opening day center fielder. And he's not going to have to carry them. He's most likely going to bat ninth, and they're going to ask him to do some things on the bases and play good defense. But, he better become a real part of this, because, they need somebody like that. Andrew Painter's going to be in this rotation, maybe on opening day, maybe shortly thereafter, but he's going to factor in, and he better be good, because as the Zach Wheelers and the Aaron Nolas kind of age out a little bit, it's going to be the Andrew Painters who come in. And those are really the big 3, Crawford, Painter, and Miller. I don't know that there's anybody else in the farm system who you could look at and go, that guy's going to be a major leaguer on the Phillies roster and contribute. They're really counting on those 3 guys. They're the ones they've held on to, have not traded, have insisted that they're virtually untouchable. And now we're going to get to see how good they really are and whether they can kind of help the Phillies extend this window that we talk about a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and kind of like you alluded to, I think there's a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation on all 3 of those guys. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they rise to the challenge when it presents itself.
Yeah, no question. All right, why don't we leave it there and pick it up again here soon, because after all, there's only a little more than 4 weeks. Can that be right?
Oh my gosh.
Before we'll all be in Clearwater again, writing about all of this and more. So, Lachlan, thanks again for being here, and I will certainly see you around the hot stove.
Yep, I'll see you there.
Okay, it's time to play Hit and Run, where we take a question from you out there. Want to join the conversation? Drop me an email at the address listed here, or reach out on the social media platform of your choice, X, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. I think you can drop a line in the comments section on YouTube as well. Lots of great questions this week, including a few that I absolutely promise I'll get to over the next few weeks before spring training. Now, though, I'm going to go to loyal reader and listener Ben Quigley at Quigley_Ben on X, who asks, where does the salary currently stand? I think he means to say payroll. And how close are they to the next tax level? How does this compare to last season? Good question, Ben. So I'll take the last part first. There are many ways to calculate payroll. I always pay the most attention to the luxury tax number because that's what really matters most. In 2025, the Phillies luxury tax payroll came in at $314,329,912. It was the 4th year in a row that they went over the competitive balance threshold, commonly known as the luxury tax. And the first time they exceeded the 4th and highest threshold, which we often refer to as the Steve Cohen tax, named after the Mets owner and richest man in baseball. The Phillies were taxed at the highest rate of 110% for every dollar spent over $301 million. So according to the Associated Press, they paid $56.1 million in luxury tax. Only the Dodgers, Mets, and Yankees paid more. The thresholds will tick up slightly in 2026, with the highest threshold going to $304 million. By my best calculation, the Phillies right now are projected at about $300 million, so just below that highest threshold, which means the next player they sign, if it's JT Realmuto or someone else, that will put them over the highest threshold. In essence, then, if Real Muto gets an $18 million annual salary, it would cost the Phillies about $37 million because of their tax situation. If Bo Bichette signs for $25 million per year, if it was with the Phillies, it would be about $52 million to them, which is why you're hearing that the Phillies would probably need to move salary in order to add a player like that. Now, I'm not privy to John Middleton's budget, but based on the way the Phillies have behaved this winter, it appears to be similar to last year's. I suppose there's a world in which, in the last year of the existing collective bargaining agreement, with the potential of a lockout looming at the end of 2026, Middleton tells Dave Dombrowski, hell with it, let's just go crazy, especially because they'll finally be rid of the Nick Castellanos and Taijuan Walker contracts after 2026. But I would expect them to be right in that same $314 million neighborhood as they were in 2025. And really, that should be enough to field a championship caliber team, shouldn't it? Thanks again, Ben, for the question. I hope my answer made some sense. Let's leave it there and tell you that you can listen to this episode and most others on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just go to Phillies Extra, give us a follow. And while you're there, please rate and review us. That's also a great way to catch up on episodes that you may have missed. You can also go to Inquirer.com and click on the Inquirer Live tab for a collection of various episodes. Thanks again, of course, to my guest, Adam Lind, to my Inquirer teammate, Lachlan March, and to our producers, Angelica Irizarry and Mariam Akraz, for their hard work in making this happen every week. Most of all, thanks so much to you out there for listening, watching, and of course, reading the Philadelphia Inquirer. See you next week, everybody.